Nights are drawing in, we're heading into autumn and winter. Inevitably, the cold, wet weather is going to settle in and motivation is going to plummet, and you're beginning to think, why didn't I get a hamster? Being said, and jokes aside, is it really your horse that is the problem? So in this video, I'm going to divulge my personal experiences in hope that by me hashing out my own problems, that it will hopefully be relatable to you guys. I hope by sharing my personal experiences, I will able to help at least one of you out there that is sort of feeling really unmotivated, feeling like you don't really like horses anymore, not really wanting to venture out into the cold weather to go for a ski trip down the field with your horse because, hey, haven't we got better things to do? So first, let's begin with my story. So I've been in the funk, shall we say, for quite a few years, believe it or not. And whilst my love for my actual horses has never gone away, I love them both dearly. I love seeing the little hairs pop over the stable door. I'm not resenting them as animals, obviously. They're part of my family, they are my world, and I love them. However, I've not really had much mojo in terms of wanting to get into the saddle or not really wanting to start my youngster. I've even struggled to get out a brush, for God's sake, just to brush their mane, pick their hooves out. Some days I felt really, quite depressed and low about it. And yeah, it's been kind of a recurrent theme really throughout my horse ownership that I've kind of peaked and dipped, and I've really struggled to get any kind of consistency for a lengthy period of time with any of my horses that I've ever owned. There are a couple of reasons to that. So one of them is that my Welsh Section D, he's always found life a little bit challenging. So Nemo's just never been right. He's found life really difficult, and he had a lot of physical challenges, unfortunately. It's now come to light that we think they're either congenital or he actually had a rotational fall that created an old fracture that then became a bone spur along his spine, and typically it's right where I sit. So he's always had very challenging behaviour under saddle, and I had him when I was 18 and I'm now 30, and obviously my education has grown in that time, and it's one of those things where the more I learn, the more guilt I feel for kind of obviously pushing through it. I always had a hunch that something was wrong, and about 3 years ago I decided, after having retired him, because his behaviour got so extreme that he was bronching after a fence, he wouldn't pick up canter lead, he wouldn't even pick up trot. As soon as you got on him, he would just sort of suck up, he'd curl his back up, he'd try biting my foot, and just displaying behaviours that to me were very obvious of a horse that was in discomfort. And obviously being at the time 18, early 20s, I was having riding instructors telling me just to work him through it, put a whip on him, all this stuff that now that I'm older and I'm wiser, I know that actually he was telling me a long time ago that he was in discomfort. So we had him lameness examined, and whilst all that was going on, I decided that obviously he's just fully retired. He had about 3 years off, and in those 3 years we did finally find, like I mentioned earlier, that he had a bone spur along his thoracic vertebrae. We also had secondary findings that weren't actually creating lameness, but I mostly flagged it up and I'm now aware of it. So he also has coffin joint arthritis, albeit very mildly, but it's just the starts of it. He also has navicular to both front hooves, and he also has side bone on the lateral side, so the outside of his right fore. In addition to this, he also had some bursitis of his stifles and a bit of hock discomfort. However, there was no arthritis found in those areas, and the bursitis is now eradicated, that he's had treatment. So it's been pretty awful. He's, physically challenged, and that obviously carried through into his rehab. Sadly, he also colicked. He had to have surgery to remove impaction and to put his colon in the correct place, as it had gone over his splenius ligament. So that was all within the space of a year. Had his first surgery for his spine, and then I rehabbed him, put all the effort in, and he was doing really well. He was kind of picking up canter again, only being lightly ridden. All his exercise had adjusted to obviously what his capabilities were now. And then he got impaction colic in April of this year, and it was just a really tragic time. Sadly, I also lost my ex-race horse, Rory. I lost him the previous October, and I was still grieving from the loss of him. So to kind of have one horse going through, essentially kiss and spine surgery, then losing one at the end of the year, to then that horse that had kiss and spine surgery, then also colicking. It was just, a year and a half of pure hell. And I feel I had a trauma response from that, and I kind of felt like, I just kind of carried a lot of anger for months to come after that. I was absolutely heartbroken. I'd spent so much time rehabbing this racehorse. I'd put so much of myself and my love and my energy into it, that when he then unfortunately passed away, it was like a part of me went with him. It's still a very sore subject for me to talk about. I'm still not over him, and I think with everything that I've been through, because it was so traumatic, it kind of made me put my guard up and made me not really want to be around horses anymore. To add to that, my profession is I'm a hoof care provider. I'm around horses all day. I was trying to show face for my clients and not show that I was, too upset about my own circumstances. Actually, by the time I finished my client of the day, very often I'd be, in tears on the way home, and I'd turn up at my yard and just sort of feel really numb. And I didn't really want to interact, and I haven't really wanted to interact with them for a long time. I did start having riding lessons to try and kind of help me get back in the saddle, but I just kind of kept feeling like this wave of guilt. I just felt very burnt out from my actual job. It was a very hard summer this year, and I was starting to have physical symptoms. I was having heart palpitations, panic attacks, things like that, and I actually thought there was something quite wrong with me physically, that I kind of lost confidence completely of getting in the saddle. And whenever my horses would do anything slightly undesirable, I just felt like I didn't really have the patience that I normally would. So I wasn't really wanting to handle them because I didn't want them to take on my stuff, basically. When I lost Rory, I also decided to take on a rescue pony called Apollo. Bless him, he's only 12'3". He's a little pocket rocket, he's great. And we rescued him because he was going to be a companion for Nemo. So when we lost Rory, it meant that Nemo was on his own, and I didn't want him to kind of just be in an individual paddock. I wanted him to, integrate with another horse. That's personally why I feel is really species appropriate, and that's just how I want my horses to live. And Apollo being at the time, I was told he was 3, so he's riding 4 now. I'd say he probably is about 4 now, but I'm going to give him a couple more months just in case. So obviously him being a youngster, he's obviously a little bit spicy, he's got a lot of energy, he's very youthful, he's a cheeky chappy, and he definitely did help kind of heal a lot of those wounds, and I've definitely needed him to kind of be his jovial self throughout this awful period of my life. So although I've kind of been deflated and feel like I need to get with horses, I feel like there's a very justifiable reason why I feel the way I do. So that's kind of like my backstory and kind of my inspiration of why I wanted to film this video. So I touched on in the intro a little bit about what I do for a job. So I am a hoof care provider, so I'm an equine podiatrist by trade. So I specialise in barefoot hoof care, basically. It's a job that I'm very passionate about. That's kind of been the thing that's kind of kept me going, and seeing all my clients and working with all the horses, and kind of being really involved in the cases that I'm working with, and working with other equine professionals to kind of get my clients to their goals and get their horses, feeling their best. That's, ultimately what's kind of held me together. However, what I will say is that what comes with that is obviously the pressure then of feeling like you always need to be on duty 365 days a year, 24 hours a day. I'm sure a lot of you watching this probably work with horses, and you feel like you're around horses all the time, and then when you kind of come to your own horses, you're almost pouring out of an empty glass. And that's definitely something I can relate to. And there were some changes that I really had to make to my lifestyle to make sure that I had room for my own horses and my own happiness and my own free time. So I think it's very easy for us to go, oh, I want to give horses, but actually is it that there is an imbalance somewhere in your life, that you are not quenching your own wants and needs. I was also physically challenged. So as I mentioned, I was having kind of heart palpitations. I already have a diagnosed arrhythmia, and I think having kind of nothing to pour out of, I was just completely, dead. I had no energy. I was giving everything to my business, and yeah, again, pouring out of an empty glass is not going to make you feel very motivated at all. So I was beginning to feel really fatigued and just lacking in energy and gusto, and just feeling like, my horses were going to mess around. I just wasn't going to have the patience or the strength to deal with it. So that's when I knew I needed to make a couple of changes in my personal life and actually ask for help. So with my business, I actually decided to up my prices and reduce how many horses I was trimming a week, and I've given myself some days off. The other thing I did was to actually delegate the task of training Apollo. So although this was something that I really, really wanted to do myself, I decided that in my current situation and in my state of mind and kind of my physical health I didn't want to leave him too long before he had kind of any handling, just because he was getting a little bit unruly, a little bit feisty, and just in this vicious cycle of he was rearing up a little bit when I was taking him out into the field, particularly now that it's got a little bit wetter out there. Occasionally I've had to have a day in. As you can imagine, being a young horse, he's just sort of climbing the walls, so he needs to be out and doing stuff to occupy his brain. So it was a vicious cycle that I was in, where he was kind of quite challenging to handle. I wasn't feeling that great, and then I was ending up having to let go of him, and he's just gallivanting around a field. And then it was just further reinforcing the fact that I didn't want horses anymore, which I just got a bloody hamster. And it was just kind of becoming this thing, and it was creating anxiety that, God, every time I put the hair collar on, energy levels going up, of which he's then feeding off, because he's like, whoa, is there something to be worried about? You're worried about something. And energy is everything when we're working with horses. And those of you who work with horses on the daily, or those of you who own horses or are around horses, that's definitely true. So the fact that I was feeling anxious, he obviously hadn't had much turnout, I was feeling weak, perhaps not as patient as normal. I was almost signalling to him before I'd even got the hair collar on that we need to be stressed now, we need the flight response. And these mixed messages to such a young horse is not ideal. So I appreciate people who are watching are all on different incomes and things, and this may not be a feasible option for all of you, but what I personally did was actually delegate the task of having Apollo trained to lunge and long line. I delegated that task to a lady at the yard who runs it and is a professional in this area, and that has took so much pressure off of me. And I really love actually going to check in and see how he's doing, and he's doing a really good job. He's a much happier pony to work with. It's been nicer for me to just pick out his hooves. It's kind of domino effect into something really positive, and he's now nice to handle because he's doing something and he's kind of having that daily interaction. I can stand there and I can brush his tail, I can plait his mane. He's a little gypsy cob, by the way, so he's got a lot of hair. I can enjoy the pampering part of it rather than so much pressure on myself that, oh God, I need to commit to this many days, or he's never going to learn how to do anything, and all these behaviour things that you're just going to unravel. So actually delegating that task has been a massive help, and I'm also considering getting Nemo schooled once a week as well, whilst I'm just sort of trying to get back in the saddle. I've lost a lot of confidence, I've also lost a lot of strength, and I'm still not 100% sort of here and on my heart. I have a little wobble now and again, and I'm just trying to be kind to myself, and I get on without any expectations. And where possible, I have a riding lesson with an instructor that I really like. She's very encouraging, she's very softly spoken, and I know that I can be quite vulnerable with her, and I think that can be quite important when you're trying to navigate these sort of feelings, that you can be open and honest with somebody and not keep it all in. I think so many of us try to just keep it in here, show face, and actually you're not doing too well. Like you say, your needs aren't met, you're feeling overwhelmed, and it creates this situation where you bubble over. The other thing I've done as well to kind of help me through this boggy autumn winter period that no one likes, I can have the add-on services if I need them, and I've just accepted that I need them. With the light drawing in, it was proving a bit of a rush job, trying to like pull them in from a field, and again, like just not setting myself up for a good experience, trying to bring 2 horses in at once when one's bouncing up and down and the other one's going off into another field. When one horse goes that, one goes that way, and you sort of like split like this. Very often I had to let one go, otherwise I was going to snap through the middle, a right pickle. And I just thought, no, I need help, and it's completely okay to ask for help. I appreciate some of you might not be in the same financial situation that I'm in. Times are hard, and not all of you will kind of have disposable income to be able to have additional services, but something that you could look into is either having someone in your local area who perhaps hasn't got a horse, would love to be around horses again but can't afford the outgoes of having a horse. If you can get a loaner to commit to your horses 2 to 3 times a week, they don't necessarily have to pay a financial contribution, particularly if you want jobs in exchange. There are lots of people that would love to come and just brush a horse. Even if your horse is not ridden, there are definitely groups of people that in your local area, and perhaps have a little pamper of your pony. They get a bit of fresh air outside, and then double win is that you get a couple of bits off your load. I think I'm superwoman sometimes, and I think, oh, I can do everything and I never run out of steam. And the reality is nobody can be everything, and sometimes it is good just to kind of go, you know what, I need a break from horses, and that's completely fine. And I think the thing that you need to understand is that having a break, a pause, does not mean a stop. It doesn't mean that you have to give them up completely for the rest of your life. There are packages now that you can have where a horse is on full livery. Granted, obviously more expensive, or perhaps if you are not in that kind of financial situation, other options could be that you send your horse out on loan to another yard to somebody to enjoy whilst you're having your downtime. And I know that will probably come with a lot of guilt, but I think as long as you're checking in, obviously a contract is in place, and you know that they're going to be well cared for, stepping away doesn't mean you're walking away. And I think sometimes people just feel like they need the permission to feel like that. You don't need to ask permission if you need to change anything in your life. I think that was a big revelation to me, that I put these pressures on myself, and actually if I'm not happy, then it is me who can change them. Annoyingly, my battery dies. I just had to recharge it, and now the light is fading outside, so that's super helpful. But that does conclude our video for today. I hope that me sharing my experiences and my vulnerabilities and kind of where I'm at psychologically also resonates with some of you that are feeling in a really similar situation. Obviously, I didn't cover too many of the practical steps on how to overcome these sort of feelings. However, I'm sure I can make future content going deeper into psychologically how we can improve our mental health and kind of kickstart our love for our horses again. I'm still not 100% there. I'm still rebuilding and rekindling my love for the equestrian sports. As I touched on in the video, a lot of that is because I've learned so much. I have a lot of guilt and have a lot of questions on whether I even want to pursue the same sort of things as I used to. It's hard riding a horse when you kind of have question marks over where you should or shouldn't be doing it. And these are sort of feelings that I'm exploring at the moment. I'm 100% happy and accepting that if my Nemo needs to be retired at the age of 13 due to his ailments, then he definitely will. I'm showing willing at the moment to actually do a small amount of riding, but it's not the be all end all for me. I enjoy other areas of horsemanship, do a lot of target training, just general kind of grooming and hanging out with one another. And the important thing for me is that I want him for years to come when he's an old man. That's what matters to me. So I think for a lot of you watching this, all your circumstances will be completely different. Your life situation will be completely different to mine. But certainly the feeling that you want to quit them all together, I've definitely felt that, and I can completely see, particularly at this time of year, why a lot of motivation goes out the window. It's an expensive hobby, interest, but not only on a financial perspective, it's a massive investment of your emotional energy. And I think if it's becoming a detriment to your mental or physical health, then changes have to be made. And I know that is really difficult for a lot of you watching, but I hope this video helped you feel less alone. And please do continue the conversation in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. And yeah, let's keep this conversation going. Hopefully together we can get through this autumn, winter. See you in the next video, guys. Bye.